Welcome back to Strange World, where even our soundboard appears strange sometimes. I'm your host, Mark Sargent. With me, friend, at least for now, and co-host, Jonathan from Jersey, and special guest, Rob Skiba. And we are talking about his really, really good website, which is testingtheglobe.com. And I recommend to anybody who's into the flat earth thing. I know that testingtheglobe.com doesn't have flat earth in the title, which is why sometimes I think gets missed. But it is a massive compilation of data. A lot of it is looked at from the scriptural point of view, if I'm not mistaken. Right, Rob?
Correct.
Can you give me kind of a what inspired you? Because when I first looked at testingtheglobe.com, it kind of felt like you were having that giant Jerry Maguire moment, where it's like, I have so much information to get out, and you just created this massive database. Can you give me kind of a breakdown of
Yeah,
what
the
happened?
history of it, as others have probably heard me say, I heard you on Canary Cry.
Hmm.
I think it was the Monday before April 15th, whatever day that was. And I immediately came home and watched all your videos. And then I sent out an email to you, Eric Dubay, and Matt Boylan, because I started realizing you guys were sort of the big names out there.
Hmm.
And you were the first to respond. So I had you on my show probably 2 days after I first heard you.
Cool.
On that show, if you remember, I was very much saying I still believe in basically the Neil Adams expanding globe Earth theory,
Hmm.
but I was really intrigued with what you had to say and listened to you. And after doing that interview with you, I just started looking into this stuff because I realized it was not nearly as cut and dry. And I think it was you that said, "Okay, go ahead and try to prove this globe thing that you believe in, but do so without using NASA."
Mm. Yeah.
Um,
I didn't coin that, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, but it was either you or somebody quoting you or somebody, whatever. Somebody made that challenge to me.
Yeah.
And, the natural knee-jerk response is, well, we've seen the pictures.
Yep.
And as soon as I really started hopping down that bunny trail, I kept finding, words like composite and finding anomalies and, Photoshop clone tools being used. And the worst one is the blue marble that was put out. I think it was 2012. It's the one that at least the older iPhones and iPads, when you bought an iPad, it was the default background image.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the blue marble. I think from 2012, if I remember right. That's the one that has a lot of clone tool being used, where they're replicating clouds, and I mean, it's so easy once I show it to you to see that.
Yeah.
But what caught my attention about that particular one is up in the upper right-hand corner of that particular marble, there's a odd-looking cloud formation that looks like sort of a backward C with a long tail that kind of wraps around the top part of the globe there. And it caught my attention because I was like, where did I see that before? I mean, just that shape. I'm like, where did I see that before? And I started looking through videos that I'd seen recently, and I saw two different videos. One I think it was on Netflix, The Universe, I think was the title of the show. And it was basically a transition, a video transition, like a wipe that was being used. They used that same Earth, but it wasn't a static picture. It was a moving, rotating globe.
Yeah.
And it had that exact same cloud formation in it. And then I started seeing it, once my eyes were open to it, I started seeing it pop up in several other videos and go, okay, how nice of NASA not only to take a picture of the Earth, but to make a perfect 3D model that videographers can use for their video productions for transitions.
Uh-huh.
And so that's when I realized, we're playing with 3D models here. This is not photographic evidence. And I, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, well, back in 2004, I got hired as a missionary, but I was a multimedia missionary. My job was to get entrenched with the missionaries, do what they do, but to document it on video, come back and make videos to help them create awareness and raise support and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So being that I was in global missions, I made a 3D model of the Earth that I used a lot. Okay, we're going to Kazakhstan. So I would do a zoom out of Addison, Texas to Kazakhstan, and I use this globe thing, as much as I use Google Earth, I use this this globe that I made.
Mhm.
And when I was comparing the globe that I made, and when I say that, I say I made it loosely. There are tutorials that you can follow by downloading various maps from NASA and mapping them onto a ball that you create in 3D, and then put the clouds on, and make it daytime, nighttime, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm creating it from scratch. I'm using available stuff. But when I did that, and I would compare the globe that I made in 2006, it looked a lot better, at least in my humble and unbiased opinion, as Kent Hovind would say, than the blue marbles that were being passed off as authentic pictures of the Earth.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, look, if I can do this with off-the-shelf software that costs less than $300, what can these guys do with practically unlimited budgets?
Yep.
And so the photographic evidence was falling apart for me. Then I was thinking about the famous Apollo 17 picture that we've all seen with the continent of Africa, sticking up in your face. And I had wallpaper in my bedroom that was the surface of the moon with the Earth in the background, and it was that full Earth, the full globe from Apollo 17 that we've all seen.
Yep.
But as soon as because I started thinking about that, it's in my parents' house up in Massachusetts. I'm thinking, I wonder if that wallpaper is still available. So I started combing the internet for wallpaper sites, trying to find it. And I found basically the same wallpaper, except the Earth was different. I found some of the ones that had the same picture of the Apollo 17, but the Earth was in shadow. My Earth was fully illuminated. And then I found but the foreground was exactly the same. And then I saw an updated version of that where the foreground is exactly the same as the one that I had growing up in the 70s, that had now had the blue marble superimposed on that picture with added stars and stuff. So I'm like, this is all artwork, that at that point, I'm freaking out. I'm going to space.com. I'm going to nasa.gov. And all this, by the way, is if you go to testingtheglobe.com and in the top menu, it says One Man's Quest for Truth, and you click on the opening statements. This is all in the opening statements. This little story I'm telling is depicted there with your videos and the Canary Cry and then the interview I did with you. And in part one, it's called In Whom Do We Place Our Trust? And that's where I've got the pictures of the wallpaper and everything. And when I go to space.com and nasa.gov and I look at alleged pictures of the Earth, the scale is completely crazy. Like in one of the pictures, the North American continent takes up half the globe. It's like huge.
Yeah.
The scale's all wrong. Other pictures, the color's all wrong. It's all crazy. And then I see the Galileo on the JPL website. I found the video taken from the Galileo space probe about 7 million miles away on December 11th, 1990, showing the Earth in 25, it's a time lapse, 25 hours of rotation.
Yep.
But none of the clouds are changing, or at least not in when you look at the low res video, it doesn't look like there's any movement of the clouds at all. People have since sent me higher res versions of it, but the higher res versions that they send me look too good. In other words, they don't look like 1990s technology. They look like somebody remodeled that on a better model.
Yeah.
But whatever the case may be, even if there is subtle movement in the clouds, in 25 hours, there should be massive amounts of movement of cloud. It should be huge. Yeah, I could set my camera up for an hour and do a time lapse of an hour of cloud moving, and you're going to see a lot of things: clouds arriving, dissipating, moving all over the place, and that wasn't happening there. So now I'm intrigued because I had done an update on my first book, Babylon Rising, and the First Shall Be Last. It was about a 50-page update, and most of that was bashing on NASA and how it's a thoroughly occult organization, and all of their programs are named after pagan gods, and all that. So I had already had all that kind of framework in my mind as I'm now looking into what I thought was pretty solid evidence for the globe. And so that was the first thing. And then what should have been the first thing was I should have gone to the scriptures as somebody who trusts the scriptures as a source for truth. That should have been my first move. It was actually my second. After looking at this stuff, I looked through the scriptures, and like I said, when you look at it with an unbiased mindset, in other words, don't put your preconceived ideas onto the text. There's no way you're going to get a spinning heliocentric globe out of it.
Yeah.
So now I'm stuck, and I'm going, okay, I can't get out of this research now because I've opened up too many boxes that I've got to figure out the pieces, to this puzzle. And And then everybody starts sending me all the usual arguments. And I put together part two, easy globalist arguments to refute. And it's all the knee-jerk reactions are, if it's flat, how come ships don't go off the edge of the earth? Ha ha. What? Well, it's enclosed. Google the Antarctic coastline. You'll see why, the bird wall, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Nobody's falling off the edge. But the other one, I called it globalist argument number one, was, well, everything else we see is up there are spherical. I'm like, so? That doesn't ipso facto mean we are.
Yeah.
That's like, I say in the argument, I'm like, that's like, growing up in Asia to Asian parents where everybody you know and have ever seen are Asian and automatically demanding that every human being on the planet has Asian features.
There you
go. Clearly there's a diversity of features in the human race,
Yeah.
So just because the sun, moon, and planets and everything else looks spherical, that doesn't mean that we are. Biblically speaking, all that's put up there for our benefit.
Yep.
We're the center stage main attraction. So just by that alone, we are different.
Yeah.
So and then I went to this whole list of the usual globalist arguments. How come you can circumnavigate? Well, circumnavigating a disk is exactly the same as circumnavigating a globe.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going in a circle with north as your, if you're going east, you have to keep north off to the left,
Yeah.
So that's, I went through all that, and I tried to, this was basically me thinking out loud. Because as I'm going through all this stuff, I wanted to document it so I didn't forget it. And so it started out as a really long blog, one huge blog. It was like 60 pages if you just printed that one blog out.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh shoot, because I thought this was going to be kind of a quick deal for me. I'm gonna debunk it and I'm gonna move on and whatever. And then it kept growing and growing and growing. I said, well, God, I just got to go out and make a website. And so when I started looking for all the domains and, coming up with ideas for domains, Testing the Globe was one I came up with that happened to be available. So I was like, perfect. So that's when I started dividing it all out into various chapters and stuff, and putting up people keep sending me all these videos, like the Red Bull. Everybody says you the Red Bull.
That Red Bull video. Ugh. Yeah, go ahead.
If you want to see how fisheye lenses work, get the Red Bull video.
Yeah.
And then the Joshua. This is all the same at the same time that I'm doing all this. You got the Joshua Nowicki picture shows up on mainstream news. It was a ABC News affiliate, Channel 57. This weatherman tap dancing to try to say this is a mirage.
The Chicago skyline. Yeah.
Yeah, 60 miles away. Here's the Chicago skyline, and he's. If you listen to the guy, I'm not convinced he believes what he's saying.
Yeah, but it probably didn't make sense to him though either. Because why can we see the skyline?
Until I found this photo from the Grandmere State Park. This is from Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline. Very interesting. Here's what's happening. This is a good example of a superior mirage. So Joshua was on the Lake Michigan shore. He was looking towards the west, and Chicago's beyond the horizon. Should not be able to see it. However, with the right conditions, we have an inversion. We have cold air near the cold lake water and some relatively warmer air above it. This will bend the image of that skyline back towards the viewer. And so typically we would not be able to see this. This image would be viewable from much, much higher in the sky, up in space. But instead, we're able to see it on the Lake Michigan shore. Very fascinating, and that's the same reason.
So he goes to this tap dance on mirage. Well, meanwhile, I go to San Diego, and because I was asked to be a speaker at a conference there. And, of course, this is the first time I'm on an airplane having with this mindset. So, because I would have said the same as everybody, if you've ever flown in an airplane, you've seen the curvature of the Earth. I mean, everybody says that. I said it. I've been in the air more times than I can count. I was a pilot for 6 years in the Army myself. And, of course, as a missionary and everything else, and all my public speaking, I'm always in the air. But this time I'm in the air with intent. I'm looking out the window, and I'm like, man, son of a gun, it looks flat to me. I'm taking pictures, and I get home, and I put the pictures in Photoshop, put a parallel bar over it. It's flat as a pancake. Other people are telling me, well, if you've ever stood on the beach and looked out at the ocean, you've seen the curve of the Earth. So I go to Malibu. I'm standing on the beach. I'm looking out, and my eyes are telling me it's curved because I've got the illusion of the land in my peripheral vision because your eye is a curved lens, And straight ahead, it looks flat, but in your peripheral vision, it has this illusion of dropping off. So you think that it is curved. So I did a panoramic view, in video and stills, bring it into Photoshop, put a parallel line over it, flat as a pancake. Yep. So I go up into the mountains, way up into the mountains of Malibu, looking out to probably 100 miles left to right of the ocean. And I take a picture of that, bring it into Photoshop, put a parallel bar, flat as a pancake.
Yeah.
So then I meet a guy who's helping me with the television series I'm working on, Seed. He's one of my writers. Mm-hmm. And we're kind of catching up on things and talking about the storyline. Well, he goes, so I've been watching you on Facebook and this whole flat Earth thing, and I got to tell you a story. I said, okay. He said, I grew up on Ventura Beach as a lifeguard there as a kid and growing up. And he said, on a clear day, you could look out and see the Anacapa Arch. And I said, well, what's that? He's one of those island arches. It's an island, but it has a hole that, like, you could go through with it, like a sailboat can go under it or something,
Yeah.
And the top of the arch is about 25 feet off the water, and the top of the island is about 40 feet above the water. So about another 20 feet above the bottom of the top of the arch. Mm-hmm. So he says, but that's like 20 miles away. So when you do the spherical geometry on that, mm-hmm. at 20 miles away, the land that you're standing on and the surface of the water, presuming you're standing at the beach, would be 266 feet below your ability to see it. So the top of the arch would be about 220 feet below your ability to see it. So I said, okay, that's based on math that people have been showing me, globalists, not flat earthers. This is globalist math.
Yeah.
I said, do you know any? I'm not mathematically inclined, so do you know anybody, or can you confirm this math? He goes, a good friend of mine is a math professor at the college over here at the university. I said, okay, great. Tell you what, run it by him as a word problem. Tell me what he says. He said, okay, this should be fun. So he goes to the guy. He says, we're supposedly on a globe that's 25,000 miles in circumference, right? Yeah. Okay, so if I wanted to know how far below the curvature an object should be that's 40 feet high and about 20 miles away, what would the math be? And, how far below the curvature should it be? So the guy does the math on the board and comes up with about 200 to 220 feet below the curvature would be the top of a 40-foot object. Mm-hmm. And so he says, okay, so by your math, you're telling me that should be over 200 feet below my ability to see it. I should not be able to see that. He goes, yep, absolutely. He says, well, the problem is we've all seen it. And the math professor says, what are you talking about? He goes, the Anacapa Arch. And all of a sudden, the guy's doing the Flintstone sound effect there. As the gerbil jumps off the wheel in his head.
I have that sound effect. It just doesn't work tonight.
You can work on that one in the background there. So this math professor turns around, looks at his blackboard at the formula that he just put up there himself in his own handwriting, and he goes, huh. Right, we should not be able to see that. And so as I start putting this stuff out there, my friend Rick Hummer, he lives not too far away from where Joshua Nowicki took the picture. Uh-huh. So he calls me up because, you know what, dude, I've been hearing what you're saying. He says, we've all seen Chicago from here. You could talk to anybody around here. We've all seen it.
Yeah.
And it's not wavy. It's not inverted. It's not distorted like you would expect for a mirage.
Yeah.
So these are the things that really got me hooked, because this doesn't require NASA, the government, or the military. This is stuff that I can go out and do myself.
Yeah.
And when you do terrestrial-based observation, like Samuel Robertson did with his book Zetetic Astronomy, it's like 300 pages of terrestrial-based observation. Mm-hmm. It's not showing up as a ball.
Yeah.
And, that's basically Testing the Globe is my personal journey, one man's quest for truth. That's me trying to figure this stuff out. And as I'm doing it, I'm documenting it